The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the empty space between star systems. It was built to be neutral ground where different alien species could meet without fear. Today, the station buzzed with activity as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for one purpose: to decide if humans could join their union. Princess Nara stood in her private chamber, looking out at the stars through a crystal window. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw it back in beautiful patterns. She was tall and elegant, with sharp edges that could cut through metal if she wanted. Her people, the Veltani, had lived for thousands of years. They were old when most other species were still learning to use fire. The Veltani spoke through music and vibrations that came from their crystal bodies. Other species needed special devices to understand them. Nara had been alive for 300 years, which made her young by her people's standards. But she was smart and powerful, and her voice carried weight in the Galactic Union. She turned away from the window as her aide, a smaller crystal being named Doll, entered the room. Doll's body sang a low note that meant urgent news. "The human delegation has arrived," Doll said in their musical language. "Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim is requesting a meeting before tomorrow's vote." Nara's crystal form darkened slightly, showing her displeasure. "No, I have nothing to say to him that I have not already said in the council chambers." She had spent months preparing her case against humanity. The evidence was clear and damning. Humans were violent. They had spent their entire history fighting wars against each other. They destroyed their own planet's environment for short-term gain. They lived only 70 or 80 years, which made them think differently than species that lived for centuries or millennia. Most importantly, humans were unpredictable. They acted on emotion rather than logic. They took risks that no sensible species would take. In Nara's mind, allowing humans into the Galactic Union would be like inviting a wild animal to live in your home. "Princess," Doll sang carefully, "the other delegates are asking for your final assessment. The Keith ambassador wants to know if you have found any positive aspects of human culture." Nara walked to her desk where holographic displays showed information about Earth and its people. Images of human wars filled the screens. Cities burning, weapons that could destroy entire planets, environmental disasters caused by human carelessness. "Look at this," she said, gesturing at the displays. "In the last century alone, humans have fought 2 global wars. They created weapons capable of destroying all life on their planet. They have driven thousands of species to extinction. They pollute their air and water while knowing it will harm future generations." She paused at an image showing human children in a war zone. They cannot even protect their own young. How can we trust them to be responsible members of a galactic community? Doll's music took on a questioning tone. But the reports also show positive aspects. Their art, their music, their literature, their capacity for sacrifice to help others. Emotional responses, Nara dismissed. They act on feeling rather than thought. Yes, they can be kind, but they can also be incredibly cruel. Often the same individual shows both traits. This inconsistency makes them dangerous. The princess moved to another display showing Earth's solar system. They have barely left their own star system. They have no experience with the complexities of galactic politics. They do not understand the delicate balance we have maintained for millennia. Her crystal body resonated with certainty. "The ethereals agree with me. So do the Verdani Council. The Kith are uncertain, but they will follow our lead. When I present my final arguments tomorrow, the vote will be clear. Humanity will be denied membership." Doll's form shifted to show concern. "The human ambassador seems different from what our report suggested. He has been respectful in all interactions. He even learned some of our harmonic language." Nara's laugh was like wind chimes in a storm. "A few basic phrases to impress us. Typical human manipulation. They say what they think others want to hear." She walked to the center of the room where a 3-dimensional map showed the current political situation in the galaxy. The Velthani Empire controlled several key systems. Their alliance with the Ethereals and Verdani formed a powerful bloc. The smaller species usually followed their lead. "Tomorrow I will remind the Council why we have lived in peace for so long," Nara said. "It is because we are careful about who we allow into our community. We choose species that are stable, predictable, and mature. Humans are none of these things." Doll played a soft melody that meant understanding but also sadness. "Very well, Princess. I will inform the human delegation that you will not meet with them." As her aide left, Nara returned to the window. In the distance, she could see the human ship that had brought their delegation. It was smaller than most diplomatic vessels, built for function rather than beauty. Typical human thinking, practical but lacking elegance. She thought about Ambassador Kim. The man had impressed some delegates with his knowledge of their cultures and his patient demeanor. But Nara had studied humans carefully. She knew that beneath their diplomatic masks they were still the same violent, emotional creatures that had nearly destroyed their own world. The princess activated her personal communication device and sent a message to her allies. The ethereal collective responded first with their flowing thoughts that felt like wind through her crystal structure. They confirmed their intention to vote against human membership. Next came the Verdani, their plant-like consciousness slow but steady. They had decided that humans were too young as a species, too quick to change. The Verdani valued stability above all else, and humans represented chaos. Finally, the Keith responded through their hive mind translator. The insect-like species was nervous about human unpredictability, but respected their technological achievements. They would abstain from voting, which effectively meant supporting the majority. Nara felt satisfied. The vote was decided before it even began. She spent the evening reviewing her presentation one final time. Videos of human conflicts played in the background while she polished her arguments. Their history was full of violence and environmental destruction. Their psychology was driven by short lifespans and emotional thinking. Their technology, while impressive, was focused on weapons and control. As she prepared for sleep, Nara felt confident that she was protecting the galaxy from a dangerous influence. The Galactic Union had maintained peace for 3,000 years by being selective about membership. Adding humans would upset that balance. Her last thought before entering her crystal dormancy was simple. Tomorrow, she would save the galaxy from humanity's chaos. Outside her chamber, the space station continued its slow rotation. Human Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim sat in his quarters, reading reports about each species in the Union. He had spent years preparing for this moment, learning languages and customs, studying the complex web of galactic politics. He knew the odds were against his people. He understood Princess Nara's concerns, even if he disagreed with her conclusions. Humans were young and sometimes reckless, but they were also capable of incredible growth and compassion. Tomorrow would determine whether humanity would join the galactic community or remain isolated on their small blue world. The ambassador closed his files and tried to rest, knowing that the next day would change everything. The morning of the vote started like any other day on Harmony's Edge. Delegates from dozens of species moved through the corridors, preparing for what many considered a routine decision. The humans would be denied membership, and galactic life would continue as it had for millennia. Princess Nara arrived at the council chamber early, her crystal form gleaming under the station's artificial lights. She carried data pads containing her final presentation against humanity. Her aide doll followed behind, carrying additional evidence they had gathered over the past months. Ambassador Hyunwoo was already in the chamber, sitting quietly at the human delegation's table. He wore simple dark clothing that seemed plain compared to the elaborate garments and natural forms of other delegates. Nara noticed he was reading something on a small device, occasionally making notes with an old-fashioned pen. The ethereal delegates floated into the chamber like living clouds, their gaseous forms shifting between colors. The Verdani representatives grew up from specially prepared soil patches, their tree-like bodies creaking softly as they reached full height. The Kith arrived in perfect formation, their insect bodies moving with mechanical precision. Council leader Vex, an ancient being whose species had founded the Union, called the session to order. His translator device converted his whistling language into words everyone could understand. "We gather today to decide the application of the species known as humans for membership in our Galactic Union," Vex announced. "Princess Nara of the Velthani Empire has requested to present the primary opposition statement." Nara rose gracefully, her crystal body catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. She activated the holographic displays that showed images of Earth and human history. "Honored delegates," she began, her harmonic voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We must consider carefully what we invite into our peaceful community." The displays showed scenes of human warfare. Soldiers fighting in trenches, Cities destroyed by bombing, nuclear weapons exploding in test sites. The images were carefully chosen to show humanity at its worst. This species has spent its entire recorded history in conflict, Nara continued. They have developed increasingly powerful weapons, culminating in devices capable of destroying their entire planet. Even now, they maintain arsenals that could end all life on their world. She gestured to environmental data. They have poisoned their own atmosphere and oceans. They have driven countless species to extinction through carelessness and greed. They consume resources faster than their planet can replace them. Ambassador Hyunwoo listened without expression, occasionally taking notes but never interrupting. His calm demeanor seemed to annoy some delegates who expected him to defend his species more aggressively. Most concerning, Nara said, is their psychological makeup. Humans live brief lives of 70 to 80 years. This creates a sense of urgency that leads to poor decision-making. They act on emotion rather than logic. They are unpredictable and often violent when challenged. The ethereal collective whispered among themselves, their gaseous forms shifting uneasily. The Verdani remained still, but their leaves rustled in patterns that indicated agreement. Even the usually neutral Keith seemed convinced by Nara's arguments. The Galactic Union has maintained peace for 3 millennia by carefully selecting mature, stable species for membership, Nara concluded. Humans represent chaos and violence. Adding them to our community would endanger everything we have built. As she finished speaking, the chamber's lights suddenly flickered. A low vibration ran through the station's hull, causing several delegates to look around nervously. The vibration grew stronger, accompanied by a sound like reality itself was tearing. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the station. The chamber's main display activated automatically, showing the external sensors. Space around Harmony's edge was twisting and bending in impossible ways. Dark energy crackled along the station's hull as something massive forced its way through the fabric of reality. "What is that?" whispered the Verdani representative, their leaves shaking with fear. The thing emerging from the spatial rift defied easy description. It was darkness given form, a writhing mass of shadow and malevolent energy. As it fully materialized, smaller pieces broke off and began moving toward the station with terrifying purpose. "Devourers," breathed Council Leader Vex, his ancient voice filled with horror. They were supposed to be extinct. The creatures struck the station's shields with tremendous force. The lights went out completely for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. Through the chamber's windows, delegates could see the dark entities flowing over the station's hull like living oil. "All delegates to secure positions," announced the station's computer system. "We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Security teams are responding, but the security response was already failing. Reports flooded in from across the station as the creatures penetrated the hull. They moved through corridors like flowing darkness, and weapons had no effect on them. Worse, they seemed to drain energy from everything they touched: power systems, lights, and living beings." Princess Nara received an urgent message on her communication device. Her personal guards, elite Velthani warriors stationed in the diplomatic quarter, were under attack. The creatures were specifically targeting her people, drawn to their unique crystal energy signatures. "I must reach my guards," she told Dahl urgently. "They cannot face these things alone." The council chamber was in chaos as delegates tried to contact their own security teams. The ethereals were particularly vulnerable. Their gaseous form seemed to attract the creatures like beacons. The Verdani were trying to retreat into their soil patches, but the darkness followed them even there. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood calmly amid the panic. While other delegates shouted orders and demanded answers, he was studying the external displays with intense focus. He seemed to be analyzing the creatures' movement patterns and energy signatures. "Ambassador," Nara called to him as she prepared to leave the chamber. "Your ship should evacuate immediately. These creatures are beyond anything in our databases." Hyunwoo looked at her with surprisingly calm eyes. "Where are your guards positioned, Princess?" "The diplomatic quarter, level 7. But why do you ask? Your people cannot help with this." Instead of answering, Hyunwoo gathered his materials and headed for the chamber exit.
"I'll walk with you."
The corridors aren't safe for anyone alone right now. Nara wanted to refuse his company, but the station shook again as more creatures penetrated the hull. Her crystal form reflected the emergency lighting in sharp, nervous flashes. Despite her feelings about humans, she found herself grateful not to face the corridors alone. They moved quickly through the station's passages, passing other delegates who were barricading themselves in their quarters. The lights flickered constantly as the creatures drained power from the station's systems. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of combat as security teams fought desperately against an enemy their weapons couldn't touch. As they approached the diplomatic quarter, Nara's communication device went silent. Her guards were no longer responding. The corridor ahead was filled with an unnatural darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. From within that darkness came a sound that made Nara's crystal body ring with fear, the harmonic death song of her people. Her guards were dying, their life energy being drained by creatures that fed on the very force that kept them alive. "Stay back," she told Hyunwoo. "I must reach them, but these creatures are too dangerous for organic life forms." But as she moved toward the darkness, the human ambassador did something unexpected. Instead of retreating to safety, he stepped beside her, his calm expression unchanged even as they faced the impossible horror ahead. "We'll go together," he said simply, as if walking into certain death was the most natural thing in the world. The darkness in the corridor ahead moved like a living thing. Princess Nara could feel it pulling at her crystal structure, trying to drain the energy that kept her alive. The silence from her guards meant they were already dead or dying. No weapon in the Union's arsenal could harm these creatures. Ambassador Hyunwoo walked beside her without fear, his human face calm in the flickering emergency lights. Nara could not understand his behavior. Humans were supposed to be emotional and cowardly when faced with death, yet this man showed no sign of panic. "You should return to your ship," she told him again. "These creatures will kill you instantly." "Maybe," Hyunwoo replied quietly, "but your people are in danger. Someone should try to help them." They reached the edge of the darkness. Nara could see shapes moving within it, the twisted forms of her crystal guards, their bodies turning black as their life force was drained away. At the center of the mass stood the largest devourer, a creature of pure shadow with tentacles of dark energy reaching out to feed. Nara stepped forward, preparing to sing her people's death song and join her guards in honorable defeat. The Velthani did not flee from death when duty called. She would die trying to save those under her protection. But as she moved into the darkness, something impossible happened. The shadow around Hyunwoo simply stopped, like oil hitting an invisible wall. The dark energy could not get within 3 meters of the human. The devourer's tentacles reached for him but could not touch his body. Where the creature's power met the space around Hyunwoo, reality seemed to solidify, becoming impenetrable. "Stay close to me," Hyunwoo said, and Nara's crystal body nearly shattered from shock. He had spoken in perfect Velthani harmonic language, not the basic phrases that other species learned for diplomacy, but complex tonal patterns that required specific crystal structures to produce. His organic throat should not have been able to create those sounds. "How?" she whispered, also in Velthani. "Your species cannot speak our language?" "I spent 2 years on your homeworld," he replied, still in her native tongue. "Cultural exchange program, unofficial. Your people were kind enough to teach me." They moved deeper into the corridor, the devourer retreating before Hyunwoo's impossible protection. Nara watched in amazement as the human's presence created a bubble of safety in the deadly darkness. The creatures could not understand what they were facing. "This is not possible," she said. "Organic beings cannot produce harmonic speech. We have studied your vocal cords. They lack the necessary structures." Hyunwoo paused to help a wounded Velthani guard, his hands glowing slightly as he touched the crystal being. "Human brains are very adaptable. When I lived with your people, I had to learn to think in harmonics to communicate properly. Over time, my neural pathways changed to support harmonic thinking." The wounded guard looked at him with the same shock Nara felt. Hyunwoo was healing the crystal damage, somehow channeling energy to repair what the devourers had drained. It should have been impossible for a non-crystal being to understand Velthani physiology well enough to provide healing energy. "But the protection from these creatures?" Nara pressed. "How can you resist their power?" "I'm not entirely sure," Hyunwoo admitted as they helped the guard to safety. "During my time on your world, I was exposed to harmonic energy fields daily. My body adapted to process and work with that energy. I think it changed my bioelectric field in ways that make me resistant to psychic attacks." More guards were alive than Nara had hoped. The devourers had been feeding slowly, savoring their prey. But as Hyunwoo's protection expanded, the creatures were forced to retreat further. His presence was like poison to them. They gathered 6 surviving guards and began moving toward the main corridors. As they walked, Nara's communication device crackled to life with desperate messages from across the station. The creatures were everywhere, draining power and life from anything they touched. "The reactor core is under attack," reported Chief Engineer Tae-jin, a human from Hyunwoo's delegation. "These things are feeding on the main power source. If they drain it completely, the containment field will fail." Nara understood the implications immediately. If the reactor went critical, it would not just destroy the station. The explosion would tear permanent rifts in space, allowing more devourers to enter their reality. The entire galaxy could be consumed. "How long before containment failure?" Hyunwoo asked. "Maybe 30 minutes, Tae-jin replied. "I'm trying to reroute power, but they're draining it faster than I can redirect it." As they reached the main corridor junction, they met other survivors. Captain So-young Park, commander of the human escort vessel, had gathered delegates from several species. The Kith ambassador Namgyu was there, along with 2 ethereal survivors and a Verdani sage named Ji-hai. "Ambassador," Captain Park reported, "our ship is ready for immediate evacuation. We can take as many survivors as possible." But Hyunwoo was studying the station schematics on a wall display. "The reactor chamber? How heavily shielded is it?" "Completely sealed during emergency protocols," Nara answered. "Even our most advanced protective suits cannot function in there. The radiation levels would kill any known life form in minutes." "What about unknown life forms?" Hyunwoo asked with a slight smile. Captain Park grabbed his arm. "Sir, you can't be thinking what I think you're thinking. The radiation in there is beyond lethal. Human cellular structure is highly adaptable," Hyunwoo explained calmly. "During my cultural exchanges, I've been exposed to various forms of exotic radiation. My body has developed resistance mechanisms that shouldn't exist." Nara stared at him. "You are saying your species can survive in environments that would kill us instantly?" "Not all humans, but those of us who have spent time adapting to alien environments. We change. Our cells learn to handle new forms of energy and radiation. It's like evolution in fast forward." The station shook again as more power was drained. Emergency lighting dimmed further, and the artificial gravity fluctuated. They were running out of time. "Even if you could survive the radiation," Nara argued, "you would need to understand complex Velthani engineering to repair the containment field. The reactor core uses harmonic resonance technology." Hyunwoo's response shocked her more than anything else he had said. He began singing a complex Velthani engineering song, a harmonic pattern used by her people's technicians to calibrate crystal-based power systems. His pronunciation was perfect, his understanding of the underlying physics complete. "I didn't just learn your language," he explained. "I learned your science, your engineering, your way of thinking about energy and matter. Human brains can rewire themselves to understand completely different approaches to technology." The wounded Velthani guards began harmonizing with his song, their crystal bodies resonating with approval. They recognized not just the technical knowledge, but the deep understanding of their people's engineering philosophy. "This is impossible," whispered Sage Ji-hai, her plant-like form trembling. "No species can adapt so completely to another's way of thinking." "Humans can," Hyunwoo said simply. "It's what we do. We adapt, we learn, we become what we need to become to survive and help others survive." Captain Park was checking her equipment. "If you're going in there, sir, I'm going with you." "My crew won't let you face that alone." "No," Hyunwoo said firmly. "I need you to coordinate the evacuation. And besides, this isn't about facing death alone. This is about doing what needs to be done." Princess Nara watched this human prepare for what seemed like certain death to save beings he had never met before today. Her entire understanding of his species was crumbling. These were not the violent, selfish creatures she had studied, or perhaps they were, but they were also capable of incredible sacrifice and adaptation. As Hyunwoo headed toward the reactor section, Nara made a decision that surprised herself. She followed him, her crystal body singing a harmony that meant respect and protection. "Princess," her guard doll protested, "you cannot enter that chamber." "I will not let him go alone," she replied. "If this human can adapt to our technology, perhaps together we can save everyone." Behind them, the other survivors watched in amazement as a Veltani princess and a human ambassador walked together toward almost certain death. united by a common purpose that transcended species and politics. The reactor chamber door stood before them like the entrance to death itself. Warning lights flashed in dozens of colors, each one indicating lethal radiation levels that would kill most known life forms in seconds. The chamber beyond contained the massive crystal core that powered Harmony's Edge, now being slowly drained by the Devourers. Princess Nara's crystal body reflected the warning lights in sharp, nervous patterns. She had never imagined she would willingly enter such a place. Her people were tough, but even Velthani crystal could not survive the exotic radiations contained within the reactor core. "The containment field is failing faster now," reported Engineer Tae Jin over the communication system. "Maybe 15 minutes before critical failure. Those creatures are feeding directly on the core's energy output." Hyunwoo studied the door's control panel, his human fingers moving over controls designed for crystal beings. Somehow, he understood the harmonic lock system well enough to begin the opening sequence. Nara watched in continued amazement as he sang the proper unlocking harmonies. "You really did learn our technology completely," she said. "Your people are excellent teachers," he replied, his voice calm despite what they were about to face. They believed in sharing knowledge even with someone from a species they barely knew. The massive door began to iris open, revealing the chamber beyond. The air itself glowed with dangerous energy. Radiation detectors throughout the station screamed warnings that organic matter was approaching the most lethal environment on the station. "Ambassador," Captain Park's voice crackled over the communicator. "The medical sensors show radiation levels that would kill you in under a minute. Please reconsider." "Captain, get everyone else to the evacuation ships," Hyunwoo ordered. "If this doesn't work, you'll need to get word back to Earth and the other homeworlds." Nara activated her own protective systems, crystalline barriers that might buy her a few extra minutes of life. "I'm coming with you. My people's technology built this reactor. You will need my knowledge to properly repair it." "Princess, this will likely kill us both. Then we die together doing something meaningful." Her harmonic voice carried absolute certainty. "It is better than living with the knowledge that we could have tried to save billions of lives but chose not to." They stepped through the doorway together. The radiation hit them immediately. Nara felt her crystal structure beginning to resonate with dangerous frequencies that could shatter her molecular bonds. But beside her, something incredible was happening to the human ambassador. Hyunwoo's skin began to glow faintly as his cells started adapting to the lethal environment in real time. His body temperature rose as his metabolism shifted to process the exotic radiation. Most shocking of all, he seemed to be converting the harmful energy into something his body could use. "How are you still alive?" Nara gasped, her own systems failing rapidly despite her protective barriers. "I don't know," Hyunwoo admitted, his voice slightly strained but still strong. "My body is changing itself to handle this environment. It's like my cells are learning how to eat radiation instead of being poisoned by it." They moved deeper into the chamber toward the massive crystal core. The Devourers had attached themselves directly to the energy source, their dark forms pulsing as they fed. The beautiful crystal that normally sang with harmonic power was growing dim and silent. Nara's barriers were failing. The radiation was too much for even her advanced protective systems. But as she began to collapse, Hyunwoo caught her and somehow shared his impossible protection. His touch allowed her crystal structure to stabilize, drawing strength from his adapted biological field. "The harmonic resonators," she whispered, pointing to control panels around the core. "They need to be recalibrated to create a feedback loop. It will make the core energy poisonous to the creatures." Hyunwoo moved to the first panel, his hands now glowing with absorbed radiation. As he worked, Nara realized he was not just repairing the system, he was improving it. His understanding of both human and Velthani technology allowed him to create hybrid solutions that neither species had imagined anew. "Are modifying our harmonic equations," she observed in wonder. "Human mathematics combined with Velthani energy principles," he explained while reconfiguring complex systems with impossible speed. "Your people think about energy as music. Humans think about it as equations. Together, they create something new." The first resonator came online with a new sound, still harmonic like Velthani technology, but with mathematical precision that made it more efficient than the original design. The Devourers feeding on that section of the core recoiled as the energy became hostile to their nature. But the effort was enormous. Hyunwoo's body was adapting faster and more completely than should have been possible. But even human adaptability had limits. His skin was now glowing brightly with converted radiation, and his movements were becoming slower. 7 more resonators, Nara said, reading the status displays. But you cannot survive much more exposure. I don't need to survive, Hyunwoo replied, moving to the second panel. I just need to finish the job. As he worked on the second resonator, something unexpected happened. The devourers feeding on the core began to communicate. Their hive mind reached out to touch the consciousness of everyone on the station, speaking directly into their thoughts with a voice like the end of all things. The adaptable ones, the alien voice whispered in their minds. We remember now. The species that changes everything it touches. We fled to the void to escape you. Nara felt confusion ripple through the collective voice of the creatures. They were ancient beings, older than most galactic civilizations, but they recognized humanity, or at least what humanity represented. You cannot stop us again, the voice continued. But there was uncertainty in it now. We are stronger than before. We have fed on the life force of 1,000 worlds. Hyunwoo continued working, his adapted body processing lethal radiation as easily as breathing. We're not trying to stop you, he said aloud, knowing the creatures would hear him. We're just protecting our friends. The third and fourth resonators came online, their new hybrid frequency driving more devourers away from the core. But the largest creature, the one feeding at the center of the crystal matrix, refused to retreat. It poured more of its essence into the core, trying to drain it completely before the humans could finish their work. It's trying to cause an overload, Nara warned. If it succeeds, the explosion will tear open permanent rifts. Millions of its kind will pour through. Hyunwoo moved faster, his human adaptability pushed beyond all known limits. His body was no longer entirely human. The radiation had changed him into something new, something that could survive in environments that would kill anything else in the galaxy. The fifth and sixth resonators activated, their mathematical harmonic frequencies creating a cascade effect through the core. The devourers' feeding was disrupted, their dark energy being converted into forms they could not digest. 2 more, Nara said, her own crystal structure now stabilized by proximity to Hyunwoo's impossible bioelectric field. But the primary creature is still draining the core faster than we can repair it. Then we change the game, Hyunwoo said, moving to the core's central control matrix. Instead of activating the last 2 resonators normally, he began reconfiguring the entire system into something completely new. What are you doing? Nara asked, watching him work with inhuman speed and precision. Creating something that has never existed before, he replied, his hands moving across controls designed for 3 different species technologies: human adaptability, Velthani harmonic theory, and whatever these creatures use for energy manipulation, all combined into one system. The central devourer seemed to realize what was happening. Its mental voice rose to a scream of rage and fear. No, you cannot bind our power to your purpose. We are the devourers of worlds. But Hyunwoo was already finishing his work. The last 2 resonators came online not as Velthani harmonic devices, but as hybrid systems that could channel devourer energy just as easily as crystal power. The core began singing a new song, harmonic mathematics powered by converted dark energy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Instead of being drained, the core began converting the devourer's own power against them. The creatures found themselves trapped in a feedback loop. Their feeding turned into forced energy donation to the very system they had tried to destroy. From across the station, reports flooded in as the creatures began retreating toward their rifts in space. But before they fled completely, their collective voice spoke one final message that chilled everyone who heard it. The adaptable ones have returned, they said, their mental voice filled with ancient terror. The galaxy will not survive their growth. They change everything they touch. They make all things more than they were. We go now to warn others of what comes. As the last devourer vanished through the closing rifts, the station's power systems stabilized at levels higher than before the attack. Hyunwoo had not just repaired the reactor, he had improved it beyond its original specifications. Princess Nara looked at the human beside her, his body still glowing faintly with converted radiation, and realized that everything she thought she knew about his species was wrong. The emergency session of the Galactic Union convened 3 days after the Devourer attack. Half of Harmony's Edge was still being repaired, but the council chamber had been restored to full function. The atmosphere was completely different from the planned vote that had been interrupted by the crisis. Ambassador Hyunwoo sat in the medical bay connected to the chamber, his body slowly returning to normal human parameters after his exposure to the reactor chamber. The station's doctors, led by Velthani healer crystal singer Yeon-soo, monitored his recovery with fascination and concern. His cellular structure had changed in ways that should have been impossible. His radiation absorption is decreasing to safe levels, Yeon-soo reported to Princess Nara. But the adaptations he developed are not reversing completely. His body has permanently changed to process exotic energies. Nara stood beside Hyunwoo's medical bed, her crystal form reflecting the soft lighting in gentle patterns. The antagonistic princess who had opposed human membership was gone, replaced by someone who had witnessed the impossible and been forever changed by it. "How do you feel?" she asked Hyunwoo in perfect Velthani harmonics. During the crisis, she had somehow begun to understand his language as well, her crystal structure adapting to process human speech patterns. "Different," he replied honestly. "I can still feel the station's energy systems. It's like having a new sense I never knew was possible." The chamber's main screen activated, showing Council Leader Vex calling the session to order. Around the chamber, delegates who had survived the attack gathered with expressions of respect and wonder. The ethereal collective had lost 2 members, but their surviving forms glowed with new understanding. The Verdani sage Ji-hai had grown new thought branches during the crisis, her plant-like consciousness expanded by what she had witnessed. "We convened today not to vote on human membership," Vex announced, his ancient voice carrying through the translation systems, "but to understand what we have witnessed and what it means for our future." Princess Nara activated her communicator and stood to address the assembly. Her crystal body resonated with complex harmonics that the translation system converted into dozens of languages, simultaneously. "Honored delegates," she began. "3 days ago I stood before you arguing that humanity was too dangerous for membership in our union. I presented evidence of their violence, their unpredictability, their emotional nature. I was convinced that allowing them to join us would bring chaos to our ordered galaxy." She paused, her form shifting to show deep contemplation. "I was wrong about the nature of the danger they represent, but I was not wrong that they are dangerous." Murmurs spread through the chamber as delegates wondered where she was leading with this statement. "Humans are dangerous to stagnation," Nara continued. "They are dangerous to the comfortable assumption that species cannot grow beyond their original limitations. They are dangerous to the idea that the galaxy must remain forever as it has been." She gestured toward the medical bay where Hyunwoo was watching the proceedings. "In the space of hours, we witnessed a human learn to survive in an environment that would kill any other known life form. We saw him understand and improve technology that his species had never encountered before. We watched him sacrifice himself to save beings he had met only days earlier." The Keith Ambassador Namgyu spoke up, his insect-like form clicking in agreement. "My people have been the same for 10,000 years. We thought this was wisdom, maintaining our nature unchanged across millennia. But watching the humans adapt, we realize we have been choosing stagnation over growth." Sage Ji-hai's plant-like form rustled with new understanding. "During the crisis, working alongside Captain Park and Engineer Tae-jin, I experienced concepts I had never imagined. They think in ways that are completely different from our philosophical traditions, yet their methods work. They solve problems by becoming something new rather than applying old solutions. The ethereal collective flowed together into a single speaking formation. We have observed the human ambassador Hyunwoo's adaptation to multiple alien environments. His brain has literally rewired itself to understand different forms of consciousness. This suggests that human neural plasticity extends far beyond what we initially measured." Council Leader Vex studied the data displays showing the improved efficiency of the station's power systems. The reactor core is now operating at 130% of its original capacity. The hybrid technology created during the crisis combines 3 different species approaches to energy manipulation. Such innovation should have taken decades of collaborative research. "But he did it in minutes," added crystal singer Yeon-soo from the medical bay. "Under lethal radiation exposure, while adapting his cellular structure to survive an impossible environment. Human adaptability appears to have no fixed limits." Princess Nara's crystal form brightened with decision. The Devourers called humans the adaptable ones and fled in terror after recognizing them. These creatures were ancient when our civilizations were young. They had encountered humanity before, or something like humanity, and it had changed them in ways that made them flee to the void between realities. She turned to face Hyunwoo directly. Ambassador, your species does not just adapt to survive. You adapt to improve everything around you. In 3 days, you have begun teaching us new ways to think about technology, cooperation, and growth. From his medical bed, Hyunwoo spoke clearly enough for the chamber's sensors to pick up his words. Princess, we don't do this alone. Everything we've accomplished here came from learning from your people, from the Keith, from the Ethereals and Verdani. We adapt by absorbing the best qualities of those around us and combining them with our own strengths. Engineer Taijin, now recovered from his injuries, stood in the gallery. Humans change, but we help others change too. It's not something we do to anyone. It's something we do with them. The chamber fell silent as delegates considered the implications. Captain Park, also present in the gallery, spoke into the quiet. My crew has been preparing for the possibility that our membership application would be denied, she said, but during the crisis, working with all of your people, we realized something important. We don't want to join the galaxy as it is. We want to help it become something better than it has ever been. Council Leader Vex rose from his position, his ancient form showing more energy than it had displayed in centuries. The question before us is no longer whether humans should join the Galactic Union. The question is whether we are ready to grow beyond what we have always been. The vote, when it came, was not just unanimous, it was enthusiastic. Every species present voted not only for human membership but for a complete restructuring of the Union's charter to encourage adaptation and growth rather than simply maintaining stability. Princess Nara made the motion that shocked everyone. I propose that Ambassador Hyunwoo be named the Union's first Director of Adaptive Development, with authority to establish exchange programs between all member species. The motion passed without opposition. As the session concluded, Nara approached Hyunwoo in the medical bay. His body had returned to mostly human normal, though his eyes still held flecks of the energy patterns he had absorbed during the crisis. Your people, she said in Korean, the language she had somehow learned to speak during their shared trials. They are going to change everything, aren't they? Hyunwoo smiled, the expression warm and genuinely human despite everything he had become. We change so others can change too. That's what makes us human. And now, that's what will make all of us something more than we were before. Outside the station's viewports, human ships were arriving, not as applicants seeking membership, but as the newest guardians and teachers of galactic civilization. The Devourers had been right to fear them. Humanity was not just joining the galaxy. They were going to help it evolve into something that had never existed before. For the first time in 3,000 years, Princess Nara found herself excited about the future. The age of stagnation was over. The age of infinite possibility had begun.